So I'm responding to the claim by Mr. White that the world's consumption of meat has substantially harmful effects. His secondary claims were that reduced meat consumption has major health benefits. Second, that reduced meat intake would allow for more efficient use of resources. And third, that reduced meat consumption would have significant environmental benefits. Now, I must admit, at first glance, his argument seemed rather solid, and I found myself conflicted. I thought to myself, am I really ready to give up my tacos, hamburgers, fried chicken? So, as a result, I looked deeper into his argument and determined it was not as strong as it first appeared to be. My counterclaim is that the world's consumption of meat does not have nearly as harmful effects as Mr. White claims. And I will be responding to each of his supporting claims in their respective order. First of all, the supposed major health benefits of reduced meat diets are just as easily achieved by regular consumption of high-quality, unprocessed meats. Mr. White cites the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion that cardiovascular disease essentially has strong correlations to the consumption of meats. Which, by the way, I'd like to remind you that correlation does not equal causation. However, in 5 of the most comprehensive and most recent studies on the issue, researchers have found that saturated fats, which would be the main culprits for the correlation, have no link to heart disease. These 5 studies were done by researchers from Norwich Medical School, the University of Toronto, the Oakland Research Institute, the University of Copenhagen, numerous other universities, and all published in the Annals of Internal Medical Journal. Another study done at the University of Wisconsin found that vegetarians lack vitamin B12, as it can only be ingested by animal consumption or in pill supplements. Now, this vitamin is critical, as it serves a key role in a normally functioning brain and nervous system. And in 20% of the semi-vegetarians studied, that is, vegetarians who sometimes indulge in a juicy hamburger, they were found to have significantly less than normal amounts of the serum vitamin B12 in their system. And the more vegetarian sample production, the higher the percentage. For example, 96% of the vegans studied lacked this vitamin. He also states that a very low meat intake was associated with a significant life increase by 4 to 5 years. However, a study done with 11,000 participants and spanning 17 years, done by the Cancer Epidemiology Unit at Radcliffe Infirmary at Oxford, found that there was no significant difference in the major causes of death or life expectancy between health-conscious vegetarians and those with omnivorous diets also living health-conscious lives. So it is clear to say, due to all this contrary evidence to this claim, it would significantly diminish the hold it has on reality. In Mr. White's second claim, the supporting evidence that there would be more efficient use of resources due to the reduction of meat consumption is not sufficient. His first support is that livestock use 1/3 of the world's fresh water. However, he then goes on to discuss the differences between tofu and beef in water usage and dietary benefits, such as the claim that for the same amount of water, 5 times the nutritional value per pound could be achieved than beef. However, he neglects to address any of the other major livestock, such as poultry, pork, and eggs, let alone face the numerous issues with large soy intake, such as excessive amounts of estrogen, especially in men, which most men would find unfavorable, or how the phytic acid found in soy, and therefore tofu, can block the intestinal tract from absorbing essential nutrients by binding to minerals such as zinc, calcium, copper, and magnesium. This is all documented in a study done at the Division of Nutritional Sciences at the University of Illinois. The same goes for its comparison in land usage and protein production between soybeans and beef. It would seem that there are too many problems with this claim to decidedly conclude it truly supports the argument that reduced meat consumption would be better. In his third claim, the environmental benefits may seem strong, however, there are presuppositions lacking in support of his claims. His grounds that 70% of deforestation is due to cattle ranching lacks the proper warrants. That is to say, his concern presupposes that we are lacking trees or rapidly running out of forests. This is not supported, and this is something which would be necessary to further the grounds of this portion of the claim. Ultimately, it would seem that the claim that the world's consumption of meat has substantially negative, harmful effects is simply not true, Perhaps it would be more true to say the world's consumption of meat may have some slightly negative effects, but most likely not. Thank you for your time.
All right, well, everything's organized very well. It's easy to follow the argument. It's easy to follow the argument that you're presenting. Your first point is the one that's best developed when it comes to evidence. You've got a lot of counter evidence to respond to the point presented. You've got a lot of counter evidence to respond to the point presented by the advocate. There's not really a lot of analysis of the advocate's evidence, but like I said, your evidence is very good on all of these points, demonstrating that there is a minimal effect on this, and in fact that there are some potentially negative consequences on the second point. On the later points when they lack the B12 vitamin that you say is essential. You do have a comprehensive study that also talks about how people living parallel lifestyles with and without meat have no significant difference, and I think that that's a good summary point. Like I said, one of the things that you might want to do is contrast that a little bit more to the evidence that the advocate presented on this point. I don't really hear a reference to the advocate's evidence at all, so I would have to do the processing on this. And if I'd heard the argument immediately before, then I could make my own comparison. As it is in this situation, it's a little bit difficult to do. The second point on the water issue, I think you kind of explained some presuppositions that are going on there. That it's mostly beef. I'm not exactly sure why the poultry, pork, and eggs thing benefits you in any particular way. It sounds like that would just be additional uses of those resources. There's a presupposition, though, that there is some insufficiency on the water resources. I think that's the kind of argument that you want to be making, and you kind of did that with the deforestation argument, but you didn't do it with the water issue on this. And then you've got kind of a counterclaim built in here that suggests that the alternatives have some health risks involved. That is a rebuttal issue. I'm not sure that it belongs on that particular point. I think it's a good point to make. It probably should be its own separate argument. And your third point, you kind of explain what you think is the warrant issue, that there's a presupposition, there's a lack of trees. Well, if we combine this with one of our other speeches about deforestation, maybe we would have that argument. That's a reasonable press, but I think you probably, given the amount of time that you had, could find some other information that supports that really well. I did think that you had a nice summary kind of explaining the argument as you see it. All right. Thank you.